good, Christian. Cool. All right, well, hello everyone. Welcome to CocoaHeads for April. Good to have you here. To begin with, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'll do a couple minutes of housekeeping and then we'll get straight into the talks after that. So I'm Zach, and along with Christian, who's on the AV there, we run CocoaHeads, so good to have you here. Thanks for coming. A reminder that all the CocoaHeads events are governed by the Code of Conduct, which can be read on the website, but it comes down to a few key ideas, and they are to be respectful, be inclusive, and be aware of fellow attendees. If you have any issues related to this, please come and speak to Christian or myself, or send us a message privately if you like after the event, and we'll address it promptly. As always, a massive thank you to our sponsors. We've got Billu, whose offices are in tonight, and Procreate. We really thank them for their support. Without them, we couldn't run these events. So it's great to have them on board. And as a reminder, Procreate has a Sydney office that's now open, and I believe they're still hiring. So there's a careers page there that you can check out if you're looking for work, or if you know someone who is. Feel free to pass that along to them. There's still quite a few jobs for Sydney when I looked earlier this week. We also have a Slack community, which is a good place to hang out in throughout the month. There's a few channels that might be of interest. If you're attending this meetup, you're probably interested in the Sydney channel. It's usually just me posting when the next event is, but still good to have that. And then general Swift and jobs are good ways to chat with people, kind of not just from Sydney. We've got CocoaHeads groups all across Australia in the Slack, as well as a few New Zealand people, I think. So a good way to hang out when you're with people throughout the month. A reminder that we are on YouTube, so if you're following at home, hello, and the camera's up there, so just be aware of that if you're moving around and don't want to be on the stream. Anyone attending for the first time tonight, just show of hands. Big welcome, round of applause. Good to have you here. Thanks for coming. Cool, so yeah, if you like what you see here tonight, a couple of other events that might interest you. We've got Melbourne CocoaHeads, which runs on the second Thursday of each month. We run on the third. And alongside us, I think quite regularly now, is the Brisbane CocoaHeads group. So they've also got a schedule of the third Thursday of the month. And I believe both of those groups have YouTube streams as well now, so you can check them out after the fact, which is it's always a good watch. Speaking of events, we've also got the return of the DevWorld conference. I think many of you would be familiar with that, but it's a really good iOS conference that happens in Melbourne every year. The dates for this year are the 27th and 28th of August, happening in Melbourne, of course. And there's, I think details and stuff are going to go up on the website soon. There's no ability to submit talks yet, but that's also coming soon. So if you're interested, to check out the DevWorld site. Yes. I checked an hour ago. It's not. It says coming soon. It may be, yeah. Because I didn't want to be caught out by that yet. But speaking of DevWorld, a little bit closer to home, DevWorld's going on tour. So as far as I know, DevWorld's always been in Melbourne, but they've decided to expand this year, which is really cool, with an extra event. And they're hosting an event focused on the WWDC announcements in June. So the event's going to happen in early July, the 2nd and 3rd of July, at the National Maritime Museum in Sydney. So yeah, this is in addition to DevWorld. You could attend both if you're interested, but it's really good to have a new conference or a new couple of days event in Sydney. So really looking forward to checking this out. Details about the schedule and stuff are light on the website, but I think it's going to be primarily WWDC focused. So I imagine whatever happens in June will be the focus. Tickets aren't available to this yet, but there's information on the site, and I definitely recommend checking that out and probably staying across it over the next month or so, because I imagine they'll go on sale soon. And I'll update you next month as well if we find out more between now and then. So is anyone hiring or looking for work and wants to give a quick plug for a job? Yeah, free.
Hi guys, I'm Leo. For those of you who I haven't met, I'm in Australia for 2 years now. I have been working part-time as an iOS developer. I'm transitioning now into a full-time visa, like no working limit. So I'm looking for full-time opportunities. I've been an iOS developer for 5 years now.
Nice. If anyone's got any full-time roles, talk to Leo in the break. Thanks, Leo.
Thank you.
And looking ahead for us, for CocoaHeads, so our next event will be the 21st of May. As always, I'll post the details on Meetup as we get closer to, but as always, we are looking for speakers. So if you're interested in giving a talk, please get in touch. You might be wondering how to submit a talk. I decided to add a slide for this. We have a website which you can use to submit a talk. It just takes you to a Google form. You can scan that QR code, so you can take a photo now if you like. You can come and talk to Christian or myself, and not that scary. And or send us a message on Slack, Meetup, however you prefer during the month. So I always say we're looking for talks, but I never actually say how to submit a talk. So that's the information in case you're interested. But yeah, so tonight's schedule, we're first up going to hear from Oliver, which I'm really looking forward to. This will be a recap of the Let's Vision conference in Shanghai, as well as a few visionOS updates. And we'll take a short break, and then I'll be talking about a recent problem I had with live activities. So that's all from me for now. I'll pass over to Oliver. Thank you. Excellent. I love that.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming along tonight. I hope everyone's had a good day. And we'll go play. Look at that. Technology. Hey, first time. My name is Oliver Weidlich. I'm a user experience specialist. I've been doing user experience for 25 years now, I think. And over the last 10 years, I've really been focused with my consultancy on spatial computing and the research strategy and design around spatial computing. And of course, Vision Pro being a key platform on that. We get to work with clients globally on some really interesting apps. And we've also created our own visionOS apps as well. And day to day, we also do the usual things of websites and mobile phones. This talk is about the Let's Vision conference that happened a couple of weeks ago in Shanghai. It's now been happening for a few years. And what was really interesting was that it was the first conference really after the Apple Vision Pro launched where everyone came together. And originally it was in Beijing. This is now the third year. Then it went to Shanghai last year and then Shanghai again this year. Now, what's really interesting was that first time it was on, which I think was March, so it was only a month after the Apple Vision Pro had actually launched, in America only, if we remember that. There was, I think we had 800 people at the conference for the very first time. Last year, I think we were about 2,000 at the conference and about 5,000 at the whole expo experience that they have. So we're talking about a whole different scale and certainly the world's biggest visionOS conference. So this was the third year that it's run. And what I'm going to talk about, this is Vivi, this is their mascot, the Let's Vision mascot. So what we're going to talk about today is, as a speaker and VIP, there's a number of events that happen, and I thought I'd talk you through that overarching experience. The first thing is that we get to go to Apple Developer Center in Shanghai, which is fascinating. Then I'm going to focus on the visionOS talks because that's my particular event. This year there were actually a range of talks about AI as well. It was a key focus of the conference, and also iOS apps. So I'm going to talk a bit about some of my two favorite iOS talks as well. One I think Jessica will be very happy with. And then I'll talk about some other stuff that happened around the conference and things that we saw, and I'll throw in a bit of bonus stuff that's happening in the visionOS scene at the moment. So we usually arrive 2 days before the conference, and as a speaker you arrive, you settle into a hotel, and then the next day you head off to the Apple Developer Center in Shanghai. It's an amazing facility, as with all of Apple's facilities. And this year we were welcomed by Jason, who introduced everyone from the Apple team locally. And there was probably about 40 of us in the room, speakers and VIPs and guests and so on. So it was a great start. And then we actually went around the room and introduced ourselves. And this happened the first year, and it happened at the dinner in the evening on the first night. And there were like literally 100 people in the room. And they introduced themselves as the conference organisers, Sitchi and the team. Then they introduced the Apple team who were in attendance at the time. And then they just kept going around the room. I'm like, no, surely they're not going to go around 100 people. But they did. And it was just so valuable for the rest of the conference because you go, oh, I remember you from the first night. I remember you said something about that. And it was just this beautiful coming together. And they did it obviously here as well. So this is Peter Sandquist, who created the Paradise app, which I'll talk a bit more about later. But it's just lovely to get a good understanding of all the people in the room, what their interests are, why they're there, what brought them there, and so on.
Is it in English?
Yes. So the first conference, they introduced this service called Flito, which is based in Korea. And they have simultaneous translation, and it is phenomenal. So they've actually got a team there as well. So the AI processes most of it, and then you'll see them fix up proper nouns and things like that. It's really impressive. Last year, I hosted a panel with Linda and Sarah from the Apple Design Evangelism team, who were obviously English speakers, English listeners. I had Yuki, who was wearing his Vision Pro the whole time, understands English but prefers to speak in Japanese. Then we had 2 Chinese speakers. So we were running 3 languages across a panel discussion with just these multiple monitors trying to get there. It works surprisingly well. And a lot of other conferences I've seen in the meantime have used it. So it's good. And then what was really interesting, so this is Sichi, who organizes the conference, amazing. So he started the SwiftGG community in China, which has grown tremendously, and Feifei here as well. But what we did was we got the option to sit down at a table and have a particular discussion. So about one of the topic areas, and those topic areas were aspirations and suggestions for the WWDR team and future events like WWDC for this year. Second table was visions and expectations for the developer community. Third one was next gen apps, evolution in the age of intelligence. Next one was future of Apple developers in the AI era. And then what makes a great developer ecosystem in the age of AI. So these were really great because you'd have people from Apple, you'd have people, other speakers that had just introduced themselves or other people from the local community, having these robust discussions about, hey, what would maybe a home screen driven by AI look like? An iPhone home screen driven by AI look like? And it was just really fun to have these discussions. So we got to sit down at the first table and then move to a second table. So we could do 2 topics of interest to us. I was lucky enough to do this one, and then I did the feedback to the dev team as well, which was fun. And then we got our photo taken, which is great. Always good snacks. It's always fun to go to a new country and try their snacks, and Apple always have a good range of snacks. And we even got the hello badge on the way out and a lovely little cup. So that was fun. Because we're in a new country, that sort of goes for a couple of hours, and then a few of us went around town, and of course, being the Apple fanboys and fangirls that we are, went to the local Apple store on Nanjing Road, but then went and looked around the city. I don't know if you've ever been to Shanghai, but this was, even though we went last year, the conference was sort of out of town, whereas this year it was right in Shanghai. Amazing city, amazing skyscrapers, and this is the Apple store on the other side of the river. Phenomenal, but it was closed that day for some reason. So we didn't get to go in. That night we had a little welcome dinner, which was fun, getting everyone together and chatting. I went back to the hotel room and set all my widgets up for visionOS. I'm actually going to do a series at some point of all my different hotel rooms and all my different widget setups. VPN, obviously, key in China, the flight home, etc. So let's get into the visionOS talks. A great venue. It was right in town, a major conference. I think who's the company behind Tencent? Well, like in the building next door, there was a whole range of it was like a technology park, essentially, where it was hosted. Sichi kicked things off. And then we were really lucky, and Esther Hare from Developer Relations gave us a lovely welcome as well, so that was nice. And it kicked off with a different presentation, but I'm going to start on the visionOS ones. So this one was a really great panel focused on visionOS, and it was really looking at the emotional engagement that visionOS can bring about. So we had, in order, we had Andrew Walker, who is from the Apple London, so he looks after SharePlay and a couple of other things. So he'd flown in to host the panel. Michael Tempar, who created the amazing visionOS app Porter Newbie, if you've had a go of that. I'll show you a bit more about that later. Tina from Studio Mage in Paris. Petter from Sweden, talking about Paradise. And Liana, who's local and does some amazing work. She's got, what's the app called? Now I've forgotten it, of course. But it's all about memories in the Vision Pro and being able to revisit a place and experience those photos in that space. So they talked about things like visual fidelity creates expectations in the real world. So Petter, he's got this Paradise app. So you bring a real full-size car into your environment, these beautiful cars. But what he found was, even though you could walk through the car, it's obviously a visionOS object, and you could look at all the controls and the steering wheels and things like that, people were very apprehensive because they didn't want to go, it's a car, right? Like I can't just walk through a car. So in version 2, he's actually made it able to open the door. So people, it's encouraging then, right? So there were little things like that about the physical representation is so real that people bring those expectations to it, those mental models. Ileana, as I mentioned, talked about how spatial intuition really triggers these emotions and memories. Like being back in a place and seeing photos of things embedded in that place can really be quite a strong, powerful thing. And also things like new forms of creative expression. But they also talked about the challenges, right? And some of those were maintaining usability while introducing novel interactions. And Tina warned us really to not fall into that trap of, hey, this is a new thing, we can do all these new crazy novel things. Don't get too carried away with it, right? Try and keep it so that it's really matching the strengths of the Apple Vision Pro. So that was the first visionOS talk I wanted to talk about. The second one was Porter Newbie. So that was Michael. And this is his game. But he also talked about, excuse me, he also talked about his transition from being an iOS developer to first experiencing visionOS and then exploring visionOS and looking at how it was really different and how he would reappropriate or reinvestigate these types of things. So in his game, you manipulate light through these clouds, and it's sort of a bit of a puzzle game. You've got to reorientate the light so that it gets to the endpoint. It's a beautiful thing and very interactive, very engaging. So he's talking about placing objects in the person's physical room through mixed reality, and the experiences around that. So, you know, how do you fit digital objects into that space? How do you make it sensible for people to move around those and engage with them appropriately? And also natural interactions, right? What makes sense to adjust something? And what I loved about this one was this was a shot from early in his prototyping. So he had a lot of videos of the prototyping phases that he went through to build up this application, this experience, and what he sort of investigated. And he was sort of saying, look, you know, these small projects can lead to amazing experiences overall. Now, the Zhu Wu is a local celebrity investor, is my take on it. After his talk, half the crowd runs up and wants to talk to him. But he delivers each year this sort of annual take on the whole visionOS. Sorry, I'm going to grab a drink. The whole visionOS and spatial computing landscape. So here, and this is where it gets tricky, right? And because you're listening, you're trying to attend to his slides, which were both in Chinese and English, but you're also trying to attend to the translation service itself. But it was fascinating to hear how he's seeing the landscape change. And what I liked about his framing, particularly glasses versus headset, as you can see here, he sort of says glasses have this clear advantage when it comes to mass market understanding. The immediate reaction is, wow, glasses can do this thing, right? We're adding value or adding experience to the glasses. But of course, the downside of that is that making glasses lighter and more powerful means pushing against the limits, power consumption, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be a longer time frame on doing amazing things with glasses, but we've got steps along the way. And then he contrasted that with headsets and said, look, they're the exact opposite. It's very unclear to people what the value is, and it takes people time. And as many of us know, you actually have to put the Vision Pro on to understand what its capabilities are, right? You can't just look at it and go, oh, that looks like fun, or that can do these amazing things, or even through a 2D screen. So, you know, he pointed that out and talked about that it's a slower growth market from that particular perspective. So he also gave a local perspective on companies that he's talking to. So he's sort of starting to see devices that can do more than 40 ppd, so readable text, etc., in the 100 to 200 gram sort of size, and they'll probably come out from 1,000 to 2,000 or 1,500 US dollars. So he's starting to see some things happen in the local market that should emerge later this year, next year, etc. So it's really good to get that local perspective. At the start of the next day, we had Peter Sandqvist from Sweden, and he told the lovely story of, you know, his path from Lego in the 90s, and he works for car companies and creates their 3D models for, I think he's Zeekr. No, he was at Zeekr. I'm going to forget, so I won't say. But he's essentially gone through and watched how 3D modeling of these high-end, you know, for car design companies have really evolved over time. And then part of his talk was very much around the AI aspect of introducing that into the workflow as well. But one of the things as a UXer that I really appreciated was he talked about how he's developed his spatial UX intuition, and how that's evolved, and that it's a really valuable thing, obviously, is to get familiar with these experiences and manipulating objects in 3D. The three key aspects of his talk were the passion, you know, that with this app, he is really hearkening back to the car shows that he used to go to with his dad, who's since passed. And again, that's why he was talking about on the emotion panel at the start of it as well. And that this is a real passion that has driven him into this. And obviously his domain experience of working with these models over time, the quality that it brings in terms of the materials and everything that he really can code. And then he's been talking about, you know, how AI can assist with his workflows. It's not there for the 3D assets themselves yet, like there's still a big process around that, but it's improving. And there was another panel actually about those as well. Peter, and I think it was on a Step Into Vision office hours, did this phenomenal talk about his pipeline and how he creates these assets, from the leather to the rubber to everything on these cars is absolutely phenomenal. If you haven't seen it before, download it. You can get it for free and play with a couple of cars, but it's definitely worth checking out. And then at the end, he launched Paradise 2. So he added some cars. As I mentioned, doors that open. You can hit the key and the engine will start. You get the sound of it. You get the exhaust smoke. I don't know whether it was a positive or a negative, but it was interesting. And then the period correct garages and things like that. So it was a really nice app. One of the other talks that was really about spatial computing was how this team at Web Spatial might bring web technologies to XR. And of course we have WebXR, but on the Vision Pro, for example, it's only restricted to the fully immersive space. We can't use it in an AR mixed reality mode yet. So Dexter Yang did a great talk about that and the work that they're doing. If you are interested, I think it's webspatial. Now I'm going to forget dev or something, but there's a QR code there if you want to find out more. But that was an in-depth talk. And again, this was sort of my orientation is not around web tech, so I don't know a lot about it. And you're trying to read the translation, and you know, you have these amazing visualizations, which were really helpful to me, but you're trying to take it all in, so it's a bit tricky sometimes. And then the last one that I want to highlight here from the presentations, and I didn't catch the lady's name, unfortunately, but what is really different about China is that they have these venues and they have them all set up actually as part of the conference as well. So they'll have a space as big as this room, and you go in the door and they've got 20, 30, 40 AVPs all sitting there. They pop one on, and then you wander around this immersive space and people sort of track through over time and things like that. And this was a visualization that she had of a potential venue, right? So you've got all these seats around the edge of people who'd be having seated AVP experiences, and then people wandering through on these paths that you can guide, obviously, and things like that. A friend of mine, Joyce, has a great one, and so I did that experience at the conference this year, and it was all about the different Chinese traditions and cultural objects, and it was beautiful to walk around the room and see these objects animated and interact with those and things like that. So she was really talking about the economics of this as a business model. You know, if you buy a ton of headsets, you've got to find a venue. How do you bring customers back into this? How do you create new experiences? A lot of the conversation, especially in the 3D panel, but she mentioned it as well, was that AI is starting to help because it's lowering the cost of production. That means they can create more experiences, which bring more customers back, et cetera, et cetera. So it was really, really great. In terms of iOS talks, the marvelous Clemens did his Art of Fauna, but his whole talk was about the art of caring, and it was very much about accessibility, as Jessica, I'm sure, is very familiar with. But it's a beautiful app. If you haven't seen it, it's a puzzle app where you put together these beautiful illustrations. And Clemens talked about how he went through, you know, these historical books in libraries and things like that to find the right illustrations. And so he turns them into puzzle pieces, and then in the iOS app, you sort of put it together and so on. But he talked through, importantly, the accessibility technologies that he's leveraged to make this a much broaderly enjoyable application. So it was brilliant. And then, sorry?
What was the app?
The Art of Fauna. Beautiful, beautiful illustrations. And then MK from Korea also did my background's in psychology, so this was a really talk that appealed to me, but really talking about, you know, how do we make adaptive UX through psychological theory and learning, things like cognitive load, ZPD and scaffolding and flow. So just the different mechanics that we can assist people to engage with our applications in different ways. On the other side of things, this is huge. So you walk out of the conference and then there's just these levels and alleyways. And last year, they actually had it at a flower port. It was what was called a flower port. So it was this beautiful gardens, and they had all these little expo stands on the grass, and we were wandering around. It was in the sunshine, but they got super lucky with the weather. But this time they were sort of all along the hallways, and they had different areas. And you just rock up, and there were so many little AVP projects going on, and they just demonstrate them to you, of course. So this lady was walking us through, and she'd hooked this AVP up to a Gen AI model. So it's funny because she was looking at the wrong thing. She's supposed to be looking at her hands, and when she claps, it changes the Gaussian or the world model around her into these different environments so that she could look around and stuff like that. So it's just this little demonstration using the gestures, the custom gestures and things like that. But it was a lot of fun to go around. And of course, everyone's super passionate about their projects and so on. So this was, I accidentally walked into this room and I was almost like, what have we come into? But so everybody was seated having their AVP experiences. So that illustration I showed before with all the chairs around the outside, they'd sort of just line them all up, and they had the option to walk through these various experiences. And then after the conference, we had this After Let's Vision evening at the AI Hacker House in Shanghai. And for various reasons, I end up chairing a panel with Tom Krikorian from Studio Mage and Michael from Porta Nubi, and we just had a Q&A about Apple Vision Pro, the platform, other spatial computing platforms, our perspectives on the future of visionOS, and just got a bunch of questions. And it was just fun to engage with the community outside of the conference and the venue there. And then they had 3 amazing presentations about the local AI or AI products, AI hackers that were working on things that were fascinating as well. Little things, going out to eat. China has amazing support for app clips. So, everything's really easy to engage with, works super well, very seamless. You can translate pretty much everything. in the app. It all directs to the super apps, but they're great and they work. And then the lovely thing is the day after the conference is over, we get to go out and they take us out on a tour of a particular area. So the first year we went to the Great Wall of China. This year we went to this beautiful little town called Shenzhou. And so you walk through the gardens, you go and see various things, you go and have a lovely meal. So it's a great experience and an opportunity, obviously, to see outside the conference venue. So in summary on the conference, you know, there were a bunch of things, but what I'm always impressed by is the range of speakers they had. Actually, we had a lot of Northern European. We had a lot of, we had Italians, 3 Austrians, a couple of, one from Sweden, some from Amsterdam, etc., etc. So it tended to be more Northern European than American this year in terms of the international speakers, but also the local speakers working on local projects and really bringing that experience is great. It's great to see Apple's support of this type of event, from Esther's opening welcome, obviously going to the Apple Developer Center in Shanghai, Andrew being part of it as well. And last year, like we had Sarah McClanahan from the Design Evangelism team do a presentation. Einway got up and did a talk as well. So it's great to see that in these big community events. Those location-based experiences, I think, are fascinating, especially for a volume market like China, where the economics seem to make sense, more so than maybe might work in a city like Sydney. And Wuzhu, presenting that perspective, that local perspective on how he's seeing devices change. And then ultimately, it's that community, right? Sichi and the team at SwiftGG have built up this amazing community that comes together around these conferences. And we, as international speakers and VIPs, are lucky to be involved. So it's fun to bring it together. Now, the other great thing is the vast majority of these talks are published free on YouTube. So I've got a QR code there. So as you can see, only the 24 and 25 video playlists are up at the moment, but give it a month or so and I expect that all the talks that I've talked about tonight and others will be available. So check that out. And then more stuff. Can I do more stuff? Like, okay. So I don't know if anyone, hands up who's actually developing for visionOS. I probably should have started with that. Okay, yes, that guy is, yes, yeah. Okay, so if you happen to not know about Step Into Vision, Step Into Vision is like the amazing developer community. I'm not a developer, but I have a full appreciation for this community that Joseph Simpson started, and now Paolo and Mike and Jimmy and so on are supporting him. And they've got a Discord. Joseph does like these code snippets pretty much daily. Like I think he's got 370 or something of them up on his website, and really great examples of exploring visionOS. And then as a subsequent or a project or a spin-off, or I'm not quite sure how to frame it, we've got the Shared Visions project. And this is a visionOS community project. The idea is that it's going to be a documentary about the start of the visionOS community, broadly speaking. And how we came together, what we created. And the idea is that we're obviously creating a visionOS app that will tell these, have interviews, spatial, fully immersive in some cases, spatial video, rectilinear spatial in others, 3D objects like with the Blackmagic camera, the device itself, etc. So we're creating this experience around visionOS and the AVP. I'm the global UX, it's the team's UX lead, so we're working on that and working with people from around. But the point is that anyone can get involved, right? This is a community project, so you can participate. Developers, designers, whoever you are, the opportunity's there. So check out stepinto.vision, and if you're interested, this is the Shared Visions project particularly. So that's going on. So I thought I'd give a shout out to them. I got the opportunity last year to visit the Apple Developer Academy in Bali, just near Kuta, and they have a phenomenal facility there. Probably one of the best Apple facilities I've ever seen. They have just opened their cohort for June, I think it is, yeah, it's June 15. This is probably not for anyone in the room, but for people you might know. Like my son's 12, I'm waiting till he's old enough and I'm going to throw into this. So they do 4 hours a day. It goes for 9 months, is my recollection. 10 months, sorry. They get a MacBook, an iPhone for loan. They get a monthly payment, right? And it's open to international people. So you can go and live in Bali for 10 months, learn how to develop for iOS, visionOS, etc. Well, not visionOS yet, but for iOS. Amazing program. So I thought I'd highlight that. And for those of you who don't know, Tom Kokorian 2 years ago did an amazing survey of visionOS developers and or visionOS users, I should say. Last year I joined with Tom and with Yuki from Tokyo, and we did a visionOS professionals, and we looked at developers. Tom looked at developers, I looked at designers, and we're about to kick that off. So it gives us a lot of insight into what tools you're using. From a design perspective, I was really surprised, for example, that only 23% of the designers were using the Figma templates that Apple provided for the UI elements. So we just get interesting insights about the development and professional visionOS community. So there you go. Hope that was useful. A bunch of stuff. Sorry if I blurted it out all at you, but thanks for having me.
All right, we'll take a very quick 5-minute break. There's plenty of pizza left. You need to use the toilet, go to the corridor, down the elevators, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes.
Cable.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Let's get stuck into our final talk for the night. It's called What to Do When Your Live Activity Doesn't Start, but really it's more a deep dive into a bug that I had, and we'll go through and solve it together. So last year I gave a couple of talks about live activities. If you've sat through both of them, you're probably sick of hearing me talk about live activities. The good thing is that this talk isn't anything like those. They were about kind of initial experiences implementing them. This talk is, yeah, like I said, going through and solving a bug. There's actually pretty much no overlap between the talks, so don't worry. But for those who don't know, live activities are these things that they show up on your lock screen and they show you something. So a really good example is a live sports match. And the advantage to using something like live activities over, say, widgets is that they can show when they're relevant and then go away at the end of a sports match. You don't sit there and see, you know, no match found or anything like that. And during those talks, I was using an example app that I'd been working on, and it's a way to view live NRL scores. It's like rugby league being my preferred sport, especially this time of year, and no app like that existed. So since then, I've polished up that app actually and shipped it to the App Store. I'm quite happy with that. And it's probably a whole talk in some other things that I learned doing this app, particularly the marketing. Tried some interesting approaches there, but I'll save them for maybe another day. But of course, when you're building an app for yourself, as I was last year, I was the only customer, things go great. Things always work when you're working on your own phone and your own Xcode installation, and everything's perfect. And then when you ship to the public, you start to find bugs that you never experienced. And this is a story about that. So the app's only been out for 6 weeks or something like that. So there's actually been nothing too major, which is nice. But I did kind of spend a couple of weeks recently over the last month, a couple of weeks of side project time anyway, trying to get to the bottom of this particular bug. And I thought it might be interesting to share. So the specific problem is that sometimes live activities weren't starting. And the way that these work is, to go back, that's a massive problem for this app because it has one use case. It's to start these live activities, right? Like, if you want to check the live scores, you can do that so many other ways. But if you've got this app and you're interested in its live activities, well, you need them to work. And kind of in my head, someone could download the app at the start of the season, set it up for the team or teams that they're interested in, and then never open it again for the next 30 weeks. And they just see everything on their lock screen. They never have to tap in. And that's kind of the ideal use case. Of course, that's not actually how people use it. But if you want to use it like that, I want to support you to be able to use it like that. And that's another reason why live activities over something like widgets are perfect, just because they can come and go automatically. But the way that live activities work, and this is pretty much all you have to know about them from a technical angle, is they're a lot like push notifications. And so each device has a token that you send a message to start a live activity. And you send this message to Apple's push service, and then Apple's push service from there forwards it to the device. If you've worked with push notifications, it sounds similar, and that's because it is. This token is different to the like regular push token, but everything else works in much the same way. And when you're looking at something as simple as this, there's not a lot of steps along this process where things can go wrong. So, you know, when live activities aren't starting, you're like, what could it be? And because starting a live activity is essentially just sending a regular push notification or a glorified push notification, my first thought was to check this thing, which is the like setting an expiration on the message that you send to start a live activity. My original theory was surely these devices that are missing. Yes, Neil?
Just wondering, in what way did it not start? The activity showed but didn't have any data, or
No, the phone acted as though it had never received a message, so nothing. Yeah, that's right. And for the devices in question, I had a token that I was sending a message to, or thought I was sending a message to, and nothing happened on the phone. And like the app's still new, there's not a lot of logging and debugging going on. Like, you know, I can't really be like, send me logs that I'm not collecting. So it's just real rabbit hole, you know, time to go down and explore. But yeah, my first theory was that the devices were probably just offline for the moment that the push notification or the live activity event came in. And I realized I wasn't actually setting an expiration on the message. And so if you do that, I think APNS just tries once to deliver it. And if it can't deliver it within a few seconds, it just discards the message. And so I set that for some quite reasonable amount of time. And then sure enough, the next game, another live activity didn't start. So it wasn't that. And I thought I was quite happy with that solution because I thought this is a server-side change. I don't need to push an update to the app. But yeah, it didn't work. And so as I was saying, like, it was literally one of these situations of like, well, I don't know, I'm kind of at a loss. Like I said, there's not many failure points here. I wasn't seeing any failures from Apple's push service. I was sending messages to these tokens. They weren't expired, nothing like that. Just because you're not getting a failure doesn't mean there isn't a failure going on, but Apple's push service will kind of let you try and fail many times for a particular device token before it decides to actually let you know. And I think that's around, not letting you know immediately if a user's deleted the app or other privacy related things. But I wasn't getting anything good out of my server logs. So that made it quite tricky, but eventually found the problem. And so I mentioned that you need tokens and you send message tokens, blah, blah, blah. It turns out that when you install a new version of the app, Apple was rotating that push to start token. They were issuing a new one for the app. And this would be fine if they woke the app to let you know that the token had changed, but that wasn't happening. And so my server was sending updates or start events to essentially expired tokens. And I mentioned before, they weren't showing as expired in my logs because they were still pretty fresh. But I had no idea. There's no way to know this. There's no good way to debug this. And then you might be able to see the problem here. It becomes risky to ship app updates because every time you ship an update, you're risking the token resetting. And in my testing, it was happening consistently. I don't know if it was absolutely every time an update was installed, but I was working with that assumption anyway. And so, yeah, I had some updates ready to go that I didn't want to ship until I got to the bottom of this bug because obviously I'd improved the experience in another area, but I'd obviously potentially risk someone missing this live activity. Now, obviously the simple fix here is someone just needs to open the app once they install an update, but that's not really something you can ask your customers to do. No one reads release notes, but even if you did put it in release notes, it's not a solution. And who knows when their app's updating? I wasn't happy with that, but that was something I considered. But really, from a user's perspective, yeah, I just didn't want it. I didn't want them to have to do that. Anyway, so as an aside, I just thought this was worth mentioning. I've never had to use this before, but I was eventually able to test this and reproduce it reliably using this feature in Xcode, which lets you build but not run, build and install an app but not actually run it. Quite handy. I'd never had to use it before. So if you don't know about that, it's worth knowing. But in the middle of this investigation, we have the problem, but in the middle of trying to work it out, iOS 26.4 was released. And the good news here is that it actually seemed to fix the problem. And what I mean by fix is that it was no longer issuing a new token to the phone every time you'd install an app update. And that's really good. And I don't know what the new criteria for rotation is, but I imagine it's more in line with push notification tokens, which are quite long-lived these days. And at least since installing iOS 26.4 on my phone, I haven't actually had the token. I haven't had a new token issued, so hopefully it is a bit longer. And this also indicated that it was an Apple bug and that someone had worked behind the scenes to fix it, which is excellent. But it also doesn't really matter whose fault it is because it might be an Apple bug, but it's my app that's playing up from a customer's perspective. So really doesn't matter. I just need to come up with a solution, I guess. And I was able to confirm that the bug exists all the way back to 26.1 and I actually don't support anything before that, so I haven't tested. I don't know if this was a problem on 18 as well. It might have been, but I never ran into it when I was using this app. Again, sample size of 1 last year, probably because I always open the app. Yeah. And I also knew that this bug would affect a majority of my users if I issued an update. This was the 7 days leading up to, I think, Saturday or Sunday last weekend. But you can see there that iOS 26.4 was only installed on 23% of my users' devices. So one of the solutions I considered to this problem is just withholding all updates until, I don't know, a majority, 75%, I don't know, of people are on a version of iOS that's not affected by this bug. But obviously that's not a great solution either. It could be weeks, months. And then you obviously can't issue any bug fixes, let alone new features. So it's also a problem. But I want to stop now and ask if anyone has any idea of how you go about solving the problem. So I need a way to run the app after every update without telling the user that they have to run the app. Yeah.
I was thinking you could use push notification to trigger it to run in the background.
Yeah. 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 That's a good call. Cool. Yeah. So it took me a while to get there, but first thought was actually background. First thought was background refresh. So if you don't know what background app refresh is, it lets you schedule runtime in the background essentially ahead of time. And your app can wake, do something for I think it's up to 30 seconds or something like that, and then go back to sleep. And you can optionally then schedule your next refresh. And yeah, the idea here was simply that I would schedule an update kind of periodically. The app would wake, check if the token had actually changed, which would have meant an update was installed, send it to my server, and then go back to sleep until it checks again. And this actually worked really well, but the problem was I would still need to issue an initial update, which would break the app again, and then I would need someone to open it to schedule the background refresh. So that wasn't great, but there was a couple of days where I thought this might be a solution, and then just accept kind of one wave of emails, and then from then on things would be good. But if you look at the screenshot, there is actually another answer here, and that's remote notifications. And these are yet another way to trigger something in the background, and they operate a lot like background app refresh with similar constraints around you can only run when the device has a certain amount of power and not when it's in low power mode and things like that. But all in all, it's a pretty good, reliable way, as Christian said, to get some background time on iOS, which is quite good. And the nice thing about this is if you send these remote notifications even to devices that don't have this in the entitlements or whatever this is, they're just silently dropped. You're not penalized for it. It's not a problem. And the device is none the wiser. So it's pretty good. But the other problem here is that you need to have these push tokens. You need to have these device push tokens in order to be able to actually send them. So fortunately, I was collecting them because an earlier version of the app had used push notifications instead of live activities, and I just kind of had that code sitting around in case I decided to add that back as a feature. But that ended up being kind of the saving grace for me with this bug, because then I was able to start sending all of these background notifications without having to issue an app update, because otherwise I would have, if I hadn't been collecting these tokens, would have had the exact same problem as background refresh of needing to issue an app update, needing to get everyone to open the app at least once, and then yeah, from then on we would have been good. So that was some good news. I was actually quite happy with that. And yeah, you also do these have the same problem of being rotated as frequently? And the answer is no, at least not from my testing. The issue or this bug that I was experiencing was only with the live activity tokens. I imagine if Apple broke push notification tokens, that would be caught pretty early in a beta period versus live activities where they can probably be allowed to run a bit wild for a bit longer. And yeah, so now I just have a simple schedule on my server that fires off a bunch of silent push notifications every week, and it hopes to catch. The idea is you basically just want to catch a device shortly after it's updated, but before the next match kicks off. So for now, while a majority of people are still on earlier versions than iOS 26.4, I'm running them quite frequently, but eventually I'll be able to scale this back, or possibly even just send to only affected devices. The things I'm not 100% confident that is iOS 26.5 going to reintroduce this or whatever, so I don't want to start filtering by OS version just yet, but I think eventually if say 26.5 is good and 27, then maybe I'll scale this back to just the 26.3 and earlier devices. But this has been working really well. So I released the update probably, I think it was 2 weeks ago today. Not a single complaint since the update's gone out. All the live activities, as far as I know, are starting on time as expected. And now I feel like I have a pretty robust, reliable solution, and quite happy with that. It just took a while and a bit of stress to get there, I should say. And in terms of is this a lot of unnecessary work to be sending all these silent push notifications? I mean, from the app's perspective, not really. Push notifications are pretty cheap to receive. If your app's a good citizen about when it's woken, if you're not loading any unnecessary data, or if you're not loading any data, it's really cheap to just check that push token, check if it's changed, and then only communicate with your server if it has changed. So really, you're not actually performing much work. This would be over in a fraction of a second most of the time. And really, it's not much more power than just receiving a regular push notification, if you think about it. There is one problem that I've found, but it's only a minor one. So anyone who has background app refresh off will not receive these background push notifications, which is kind of annoying, but there's really not much you can do about that at the end of the day. This will affect you if someone has them off for your app specifically, or off for the app, or off for the device itself. And also temporarily if someone's in low power mode, but that's less of an issue because really the chance of someone being on low power mode absolutely every time you're firing one of these silent pushes is quite small. And then I wondered when I was creating the slides on the weekend, is this even something I have to worry about? Like, does anyone turn off background app refresh? And so I quickly threw together a thing in my next update that just captured this as part of the analytics. And this has been hovering at the same percentages all week, but I updated this just before I got here today. About 5% of people have background app refresh disabled. And really at the end of the day, if you have background app refresh disabled and you're on iOS 26.3, it's not much I can do. If you contact support, I'll ask you politely to turn it back on. But I hope that this is a small enough percentage of the user base that it's not actually a big problem. That's it. Thanks for hearing me. I just wanted to describe that problem and how I worked through it. And yeah, if you have questions, Neil.
I'm fairly, unless it's changed.
Yeah.
The APNS tokens they tell you it can change and you should refresh them on every app start.
Yep.
But I've never actually seen it change. So
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
Yep.
doesn't guarantee. People sometimes turn off push notifications altogether.
Yep.
That doesn't work. And I've done with a live activity which is not derived by network data, and found the local request to start sometimes just silently fails. Nothing to do with APNS, nothing to do with tokens. It just silently, nothing happens. And you ask it to do it once, 3 times.
Is this locally scheduling
or not? No idea why.
Is this scheduling a live activity locally?
Nope, no scheduling. Literally, I want to start the live activity now. I'm in the app.
Oh, now.
Start, and sometimes it fails.
Oh, okay, that's
there are
interesting.
some other interesting things I've found.
Yeah.
I got around a different problem because I'm trying to do a local thing, which is relying on one type of functionality to a certain time, and then switch to the location data. And I want it to go when the time goes, switch to start tracking location and use this for the live activity data. Except you can't, if you schedule a timer to trigger that, if the app goes in the background, the timers get killed. So my workaround for that was ask for location, but at the lowest resolution, and then it stays in background, and then the timer doesn't get killed. So super low resolution location, timer goes up, change mode to high resolution, the live activity data switches from countdown timer to the data I want. But it's swings and roundabouts, but there's a lot of weird stuff with live activities.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I know there's a lot out there about how live activity is unreliable. And I think in particular, I think it was iOS 17, they were known to be quite buggy. I've had, honestly, nothing but really good experiences since 18. This issue aside, this is probably the biggest like reliability thing that I've found, issue that I've found. Apart from that, like all the remote systems, I mean, it's built on APNS. It is reliable. You know, how often do you miss a push notification? It's not really a problem. So yeah, I've been impressed by that overall, but I think part of it is there is that bad perception about live activities as well. And I was a little bit more worried. And if this is the biggest problem I have, I think that's going to be okay. Yeah.
Live activities require push notifications to be enabled?
No, completely separate. And completely separate token. And sorry, what I was going to say before when Neil mentioned the push token, I was treating the live activity token as though it was a push token, like exact same thing. The app launches, you grab the token, you send it to your server pretty much every time if the app comes to the foreground, right? Even though it never changes, that's best practice or whatever. But I always thought that either they don't rotate very often because I've never really had a problem with it, or your app's woken when they're rotated, or it happens on launch. Because there are some apps, like if I have old iPhones that sit in a drawer for years, and you can turn them on years later, and you're still getting some recent push notifications. So that token that you had a year ago is still valid. So anyway, yeah, okay. Yeah, but you've got to like treat it like it could rotate. You can't assume it. Yeah, yeah.
Therefore, you have to assume that it can.
Yeah.
For whatever rare reason.
Yeah, in pretty much every like commercial app that I've worked on, you basically just send that token to your server every single launch, whether or not it's changed.
So that means you know which OS version the tokens apply to, so you can only send these pushes for OS versions not affected by this.
I have, as part of my like devices table, I capture the OS version that you're running on, so I could then kind of cross-reference and go only send to tokens that are also on 26.3 and below. But that's kind of, you have to have that in place to be able to do that. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. That's all for CocoaHeads tonight. So thanks for coming. We'll hope to see you next month and get home safely. Thanks.
Yeah.